Numbers and Overview. Dear friends, as we said in the previous story, today we will have an overview of the Book of Numbers. The Book of Numbers is the fourth book in the Bible and the fourth book that Moses wrote. The names and chapters of these books were written and divided later to help us study. The first 5 books of the Bible are known as the Pentateuch. It is written by Moses. Don't you remember that at the beginning of this book we told you why this book is called Numbers? It is called Numbers because the census of the Israelites was taken twice during their journey to the Promised Land. Even though the name is Numbers, this book mainly contains the Israelites' journey and their grumblings. Speaking of journey, let us rewind a little to know where this journey starts. The Lord took Abraham from beyond the Euphrates and asked him to go to the land that he will show him. Abraham, who was worshipping other gods, when called by the true God to go to a place he will later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he didn't know where he was going. By faith he made his home in the Promised Land, like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. They died in that faith. Years later, when famine hit Canaan, it drove Jacob and his family to Egypt. Time passed and the Israelites became slaves in Egypt, and they got afflicted in Egypt. They cried out to the God of their fathers, whom they had only heard about. God, who saw their affliction and heard their cry, remembered the covenant he made with their fathers, and sent Moses as a deliverer. Thus, under the leadership of Moses, they set out from Egypt, where they were slaves for 430 years, to their promised land, Canaan. They thought they would reach Canaan fast, as it wasn't very far. But as the journey grew longer and as they had to face hindrances, they started grumbling for everything. Unlike when they came to Egypt, they are not just a few people, right? God had made them numerous, like the stars in the sky, so a short journey like before was not possible. Earlier, their fathers lived in Canaan as sojourners, but now God is bringing them into Canaan to give it to them as an inheritance and to make Israel a country. So, it was also in God's plan to give them commands and laws for Israel to follow as a people whose king is God. If they are to follow these commands and laws, they need to know who their king is, right? It is also for this reason that God lengthened their journey. They started from Egypt on the 15th day of the first month, and reached Sinai on the same day of the third month. From there, God revealed himself and gave Israel commands and laws. God also gave them a model of the tabernacle, so that he could live among them. So the tabernacle was set up on the first day of the first month of the second year. Then, God took 1 month to appoint and teach the Levites how to do the service in the tabernacle. God also told them about what sacrifices and offerings a person who has sinned should make. Thus Israel understood how to come to God and how to walk with God. Then, on the first day of the second month of the second year, God asked Moses to take a census of Israel who were about to start their journey after receiving the commandments. Thus, Moses took a census of the Israelite men who were 20 years old or more. They numbered 6,03,550. Haven't you gone on a school excursion? This journey of the Israelites was also somewhat like that. As the teacher counts the students before sending them into the bus, Moses took a census of the Israelites before starting their journey. Then he gave them instructions to follow during the journey. On the 20th day after taking the census, they started their journey from Mount Sinai. As soon as they started their journey, they started grumbling. Even though they grumbled, God did not forsake them. Thus, they reached near their promised land. Then they sent spies to check out the land that the Lord told them to possess. Except for 2 of them, the rest of the spies spread unbelief among the Israelite community and made them vessels for God's wrath. Because of their unbelief, God lengthened their journey so that everyone in that generation who was counted in the census would die. In the next 40 years, even though God provided ways for them to repent and be saved, except for Joshua and Caleb, everyone who was counted died in the wilderness. At the end of these 40 years, they again reached the border of their promised land on the plains of Moab. God told Moses to take a census of the Israelites once again. Moses obeyed that. They numbered 6,01,730. In this numbering, except two, no one from the old generation was there, a whole new generation. So Moses decides to repeat the commandments to this generation. That is the book of Deuteronomy. We will see you in the next video with stories from Deuteronomy. God bless you.